This notion that the death penalty is a deterrent to crime simply is not borne out by the research.
I don't consider the death penalty to be a deterrent to crime, and I don't think there's research that supports that it does.
States that utilize the death penalty with frequency do not have lower murder rates. And in fact, there are states without the death penalty whose murder rates are lower.
Once I found out that it didn't deter crime, that was the last thing I held on to. And once I realized that, then I just couldn't support the death penalty anymore. Opposing the death penalty aligns perfectly with conservative principles. The main tenets of conservatism are pro-life policies, fiscal responsibility, and limited government. The death penalty is inconsistent with each of those. You run a risk of killing innocent people, so it's hard to say it's a pro-life policy. And it's far more expensive than life without parole, so it's not fiscally responsible. Giving the government the power to be able to kill U.S. citizens is not a form of limited government.
We do a disservice to victims and to their families when we promise them that once the death penalty has taken place, that they will feel like they have had an experience of justice.
When this legal process should bring them swift and sure justice, what we see is something that is far from swift and often far from sure.
It's not unusual for the victim family members to be brought into the case multiple times over the course of 10, 20, or 30 years. It just re-traumatizes them each time this comes up.
And these families could be given legal finality much quicker with the alternative sentences as opposed to waiting for 20, 25 years for a sentence that may never even be carried out. The death penalty system costs taxpayers millions more to maintain than a system with life or life without parole as the maximum punishment.
It's so expensive when you go through the whole process of appeals and more appeals and more appeals.
The cost of a capital case on the system is at least 2 or 3 times greater. You have multiple stages of review on direct appeal, state post-conviction, federal habeas litigation, which will take 10, 20, or 30 years. It's millions of dollars per case.
These are dollars that we are not spending to support murder victims' family members on resources for our law enforcement. There are so many things that we need in this state that we know help to actually prevent violent crime. And yet, we spend millions and millions of dollars on a system that in our state has executed 6 people since 1960.
My mother was an extremely outgoing person. She was an extrovert. She never met a stranger. More than anyone else, she was the greatest influence in my life. She had a normal, regular day in retirement of working at a soup kitchen. That was a normal day for her. And she had been at my rectory, and she left there. She was abducted at knife point by an escapee from a mental institution. He stabbed her in the throat, and she died immediately. We began a search. We came upon her car parked in the parking lot of the Union Mission. We opened the trunk and found her there. So we called the police, and they put the yellow tape, and then it became a crime scene. The police kept saying there are no clues. When the man was apprehended, it was a month later. When he was arrested, we spoke against the death penalty, and then later we issued a formal statement to the district attorney asking that they not consider the death penalty. I'm more convinced that we do not need the death penalty after her murder. We said at her funeral, we believe in the miracle of forgiveness. It became a miracle in it that it brought us peace, that the person who lives inside of you no longer had to live there because he is forgiven.
The thing that has inspired me to continue to be a part of those who are opposed to the death penalty have been those families who have had loved ones who have been killed, who found in their own spirits that need to forgive. If people can somehow have that inner strength, then it ought to be somehow for those of us to have the faith to find alternatives to the death penalty.